The second reading for today comes from Acts chapter 2, verses 42 through 47. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers. Awe came over everyone, because many wonders and signs were being done by the apostles. All who believed were together and had all things in common. They would sell their possessions and goods and distribute the proceeds to all, as any had need. Day by day, as they spent much time together in the temple, they broke bread at home and ate their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having the goodwill of all the people. And day by day, the Lord added to their number those who were being saved. May God bless this reading to us today. The 23rd Psalm is certainly one of the most comforting passages. I read that as the scripture for the centering prayer this past Tuesday because I can't think of a better passage to read in times of uncertainty. It's so easy to hear that beautiful vision of a place of peace and a place of safety and to go to a happy place in my mind. Now, it brought to mind the picture that I have in my office and I've had for a really long time. I took this picture as a teenager. It's a dune in Pensacola Beach. It's a place that I used to go running. Trying to get to the top of this was always kind of an achievement, I felt like, running through the thick sand. And so I took this picture one time just looking across into the intercontinental, the Sound as we called it, on Pensacola Beach. It's an isolated spot. It was always kind of nice. There's little trees there on top of the dune. There's plenty of sea oats. It was just a nice, quiet, peaceful place. It was isolated mainly because it was a long hike from the road to get there. It was through that thick, sugar white sand that makes Pensacola Beach so popular. It makes also walking and running very difficult. So I always liked that idea that it was just a nice place to have a moment of silence, of quiet. I'm really glad I've taken this picture because since that time, of course, hurricanes and developments have reduced the size of the dune and made it a less peaceful place. You have a place like that, I'm sure, in your mind, a lakeside, a river, maybe a beach, or even just your backyard. Those are places that we need, the little mental vacations that we can take, quiet moments of meditation that restore our souls and remind us of the path we are on right now, although frustrating, confusing, even frightening. It is only part of the journey and not the whole journey, nor is it the destination. We may have to walk through some dark valleys during this spreading threat, but the path continues, and we have a good shepherd to lead us. Let's acknowledge that even though we find comfort in the 23rd Psalm and in the peaceful place it may bring to mind, we're in the dark valley for now. At this moment, there's much uncertainty how long we will need to maintain physical distancing. I've spoken to many people over the past weeks, and people who are longing for the church to be together. But they always add that they know it's not time yet. In a regional conference call on Friday and in the letters from regional ministers we'll put in the newsletter this week, we were reminded that it is not time for us to come back together. And that's difficult to hear. We long to be in community and have the fears and anxiety and uncertainty that this virus has created put behind us. I found some odd comfort in words from a song called Magpie by Ella Hunt that was written to support food banks in New York that includes these words: I'm decidedly blue today, and blue is where I'll stay, until all the streets are filled with people who hug and touch and say hello, until the only fear that exists is a fear we already know. Not a fear that silently closes every bar and public room, just bone breaks and cancer and the usual gloom and doom. how long we long only to worry about those normal fears. We know how to deal with cancer and how to include others in that fight. COVID-19 has demanded distancing, even from loved ones that can make us feel isolated and alone. It is a silent, invisible enemy lurking that has made us unsure of what we're to do. In those moments, it is the scriptures like the 23rd Psalm that reminds us that we are not alone. The Good Shepherd has not wandered off, but continues to lead us along the path. You know, over the years of preaching on the 23rd Psalm, it is such a familiar one, and I've usually tried to talk about the way we characterize sheep as not very smart, always wandering off somewhere, not paying attention. That's something I always heard growing up. But that's not the way really the story should be. You know, I've long appreciated the way that Barbara Brown Taylor, her take on this, as she writes that the bad rap that sheep get, as it turns out, is a rumor that was passed on by cattle herders, all because sheep do not behave like cows. All cows are herded from the rear by hooting cowboys with cracking whips, and this doesn't work well with sheep. Stand behind them making loud noises, and all they'll do is run around behind you because they prefer to be led. You push cows, but you lead sheep, and they will not go anywhere that someone else does not go first, namely their shepherd, who goes on ahead of them to show them that everything is all right. Sheep learn the voice of the shepherd, trusting the shepherd to lead them through rocky terrain and dangerous territory to a place of peace. Getting there is never easy. That's a helpful way of seeing our journey right now. We know that Jesus, the Good Shepherd, has made the difficult journey. And that's the point of all these stories that we read after Easter, which all show Jesus as this leader, the Good Shepherd, the one who's going on before us into life, through dark valleys and beside still waters, through illness, through separation. Christ has already been through death and can lead us safely through that as well. We find our peace, God's shalom peace, that comforts us with wholeness in this fractured world. Even in dark valleys, we are not walking alone, but led through this time and place by the Good Shepherd. This week, something else occurred to me, though. It's not just that simple means of the sheep being led by a shepherd, but rather also that sheep, just the word itself. The word is both singular and plural. That means that we might be tempted to hear and think of the 23rd Psalm as some quiet, peaceful place alone, just us and Jesus. But rather, what we should hear it as is not just the Good Shepherd guiding us, but guiding all of the flock. A beautiful reminder that we're not alone, that Jesus is walking along this garden path and leading us all to that place, that green pasture, to those still waters. And we can hear the sheep grazing and baaing and bleating to one another. That's a comforting image to me as well. It makes me think of another happy place for me as I was writing this that Angie and I found traveling to Munich years ago. We took a walk through the beautiful Englischer Garden there, eating and napping by a small river, actually interrupted by a dog that chose that moment to go splashing in the water and coming to see us. We knew we weren't alone. The park is vast. It's a huge, beautiful park. But there were hundreds, probably thousands, spread throughout the park on that beautiful sunny day. Some were playing soccer and others games, some just walking, some laying around, others sitting and talking in groups. Some surfed in the river. Dogs ran and played. It was peaceful, even with the crowd. This reading from the book of Acts reminds us of how important that community is and how important it was to the early Christians, who were often isolated from their families for their beliefs. They gathered for community, sharing with one another what they had as sheep of one flock. We look to that group of believers as a model even now, where we might not be able to meet in the sanctuary, but we are finding other ways to meet in small ways. Even it is through technology like YouTube, finding ways to communicate with one another, and more broadly, including others by reaching out into our community. The newsletters, the YouTube, email, phone tree help. We know they're not perfect, but they do provide us some connection. The phone calls we make are welcomed. They may not always be convenient, but they help. Texts are nice, even if it can be difficult to convey full meaning and emotions. Groups have met on Zoom to do yoga, and others, including our church board, have met to discuss and how we're going to move forward. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And yet in their imperfections, they still bring us together. All of these remind us that we are part of that community, sharing what we have to stay connected. There's nothing more comforting than knowing that we are part of a bigger extended family, and that we can talk and call or listen or just know that in a time of need, others will be there for us. Last Thursday, our church hosted the school counselors in the United Way as they bagged food for some of the school children in our community. United Way provided the funds. Some of us from the church picked up the food from Second Harvest truck and helped bring it here and unloaded it and put food in bags in our annex, along with the school counselors. We provided masks for them, volunteers to deliver the food. Together we shared what we have with those who are in need, praising God and having the goodwill of all the people. The point was not just that the food was given, but it was a reminder to those families that they're not alone either, nor are they forgotten. Phone calls, food delivery, cards, texts, emails, all of those acts, simple as they may seem, bring shalom, peace to our lives and our community. That's where this path is leading us, as we follow the Good Shepherd to a place of God's shalom, a place where healing and courage and joy that comes, sometimes slowly, to our lives and our relationships. You know, that's that word we use of salvation. We often forget that what it means is healing, restoration. And that's a central part of what we do in our faith. We are being healed and restored and being made whole in this faith and in this community. We pursue that because we know our lives and our relationships and our community and our world are fragmented and broken with one another and with the world and with God. And the good news is that Christ, this Good Shepherd, walks before us. He leads us towards that peace and that wholeness, to a place and a time where God's sheep may safely graze together again. Amen.